take it from there. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention, but you'll see in section 2 of each of these is the actual language that you approved or authorized at the last meeting, and then the rest is language that kind of governs both your actions in this meeting and other meetings. And I'm sorry.
So, David,
I'm sorry, there's a 7A01 attached, the last page, that was inadvertently copied, so that shouldn't be part of it. The resolution concludes with the last signature page where you see the mayor's signature and Shannon Collins' signature. That's the last page of the legislation on 1204.
so the Board of Elections can change what you have in bold, which is the actual language, but they couldn't change the actual amendment?
Correct.
So, okay. So
That will appear, and that will be advertised both in the newspaper and on the city's website, the specific language. The section 3 of all of these, it has, shall be presentation on the ballot. The issue presented herein may be synopsized as follows. That's what we present to them. They may keep it, but they may change that.
gotcha.
And this is an important point because we've been accused of manipulating language after the charter review passes it, and that's not the case. We submit what, right?
We will submit this exact language, but they have their reasons sometimes, and they'll call me, you know, as long as it's not changing the context or the context of what we are trying to present. You know, I think once I've had an issue where I've had to come back to council and really explain, here's why they're doing this, because I felt it was a significant enough change that they were making that may create some confusion, or I talked to their law department. But I just want to make it clear to you that the language that appears in section 2 of all of these is the exact language that this commission approved.
Gotcha.
And that will not change.
Okay.
The ballot language may.
Now, there is, and I doubt if it's going to happen this time with anything, but there is the potential, is there not, that this could pass by us and it goes to council. And council could strike it down if 5 members voted against it. And then if they wanted to change one word of it, because for some reason they don't like a word you used and they wanted to change a word, they are able to do that and then vote, and they would be placing a charter amendment on the ballot. I mean, that's a way it could happen.
Correct. If
Okay.
5 or more members of
Not that I
council
foresee
approve.
that happening, but,
That's correct.
okay. So this is actually the one, if you remember, I said I just wanted to dive into this a little bit deeper, and correct me, David, because I think you probably know. When I read through the charter, I found 3 references to advertising. One is in section 3.11. And all it does is it references section 6.03. So it's kind of, it's just there, but it's not important. It references section 6.03. In 6.03, we talk about contracts and purchasing, and how to solicit bids. And right now it says it must be or it shall be or whatever. It has to be placed into a publication like a newspaper. And what our goal would be that, you know what, the tradespeople, from what I've been told, there's places to go online. That's what they know about this. So anybody out there has any professionalism knows where to go to place a bid for the city, and that seems okay. In section 7.01, it references it also, and I think this is the last time that it's referenced, and that is that it's for the appointing of boards and commissions. And right now it states that if you have openings in a board or commission, you have to publish it twice in the newspaper, 60 days before the current member's term expires, and then 30 days prior to the expiration of the date of the current term. So I would like everybody's opinion on this. If by removing, and right now the common newspaper, the newspaper in Twinsburg is the Twinsburg Bulletin, which is free. So anybody in Twinsburg can get this thing. It costs nothing. I completely understand about having things online, but what is everyone else's feeling about eliminating advertising for boards and commissions in the Twinsburg Bulletin, which, as the mayor has already said, if they weren't filling positions, they can still place it into the newspaper, but this does not require that it be placed into the newspaper, which some may argue that if you don't have internet access or you're older, I don't know if people would see that as them losing something, or something being taken away, or something trying to be hidden. So I'm open. I'm just open for input here.
Yeah, I think with the posting of, requesting bids and such, I think most of that is being done now electronically and through websites that are set up for that purpose. And people who are in the business know to go to the city website. I do have a problem with the board and commission section being possibly moved to it entirely electronic, because we do, as you say, have a lot of older people, and actually a lot of those older people who are retired are the people who have time to serve on the boards and commissions, who may not necessarily go to the city website and go, gee, I think I'll go on Twinsburg's website and see if there's any board and commission positions that they're looking for, volunteers. However, flipping through the newspaper, they're likely to see that, and it may be they say, hey, I've got the time, that interests me, Park and Rec interests me, maybe I'll put a letter of intent in on that. So my point of view is maybe we should look at leaving off the board and commissions and keeping those published in the newspaper, at least at this time, but allow everything else to go to whichever way works best, which is generally going to be electronic.
I think I basically agree with what you're throwing out there, that as long as we have the word "or" in here, so you can either or of the mediums, at least the charter sets the parameters that both are viable options.
The way this is written, this gives the city the flexibility for the or. That's not to say that they won't continue to publish it. I think this just unleashes the handcuffs that were on it must be published. And so I'm in favor of going with this and letting the voters decide if they still want to see it mandated that it's in the paper also.
I agree with you, Dave. I know we brought this up last week. We talked about it quite a bit. And I agree with you 100%. And I think that echoes what the mayor said. It just gives them more flexibility and gets the handcuffs off the city.
And we're just proposing it.
Yeah,
we're not
right.
passing it.
Right.
But what if it didn't pass? Because I am all for personally 6.03 and the contracts and purchasing being allowed to be done solely online. I think that's great. But I don't know. Maybe it would. I have you know my opinion on this. I agree with what Jenny said, where it does take the handcuffs off the city of having to put it in the paper. But are there going to be people out there who, when it comes to boards and commissions, sit there and say, well, I wanted to serve on that board, I wanted to be part of the next Charter Review Commission, but I didn't see, and they got it filled up, but they didn't advertise it in the paper because they're not required to advertise it in the paper.
And you're saying they'd vote no because this was too all-encompassing?
Possibly. But I don't know. I can't say how people would vote,
Right.
but I don't know if that's the intent, and I surely understand the expense of advertising twice for every board and commission that's out there. That's definitely, there's an added expense there. My opinion is, as long as we have a free local newspaper available, then we should utilize it, at least for 701, the day may come that the newspaper goes away, like the Plain Dealer, and 4 of its issues have gone away, so, you know, we got 4 online editions now, but we're not at that point yet, so that's my opinion. Do we?
I wanted to make another point, too, on that. Okay, this is very generic. We're talking about our current administration, and yes, the mayor could say, well, for boards and commissions, we're going to keep publishing it. We don't know who's coming or what their feelings are going to be after that point. We could have someone who says, oh, I'm just going to handpick the people I want to apply, so we're just going to put it on the website, and that way not too many people are going to see it. And then I can just get the people that I like,
Right.
that agree with me.
That, you'd have to email only the people you want. I mean, it's a public forum, you know? I gotta say, too, I'm a little offended at the comment that older people might not use the internet, because I don't know what you define as older, but I'm 55, and I use the internet all the time.
You're not
It's-
older.
So I don't think you can define it by older people, and you have to go by just people, okay? So if you think that some people aren't gonna get it, that's one thing, but let's not say older people. You know, I was on the homeowners, and I got emails from people, senior citizens all the time, that use the internet, so I don't want it defined that way.
And also, you know, through
I'm not-
Ethan's Green, there are a lot of people. I am not pointing out and saying there's anything wrong with old people, that they're not internet savvy. A lot of them are. But of the people, and I've talked to a lot of people that don't have internet, that I've said to them, well, why don't you sign up for this? Oh, I don't have a computer, or I don't know how to do that. And they're not 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds. They're 70-year-olds and 80-year-old people who don't. So when I say elderly people, I'm talking about people who are considerably older, and I mean, there's even documentation that people in that age range do not use the internet as frequently as younger people. I don't think there's a lot of older people who are very technological, but there's a good percentage that aren't yet at this point.
And that's a good point. And you could even make the argument that at least we don't have free Wi-Fi throughout the city. Nobody, if you have internet access in your home, you pay for it. Are you kind of excluding some, not all, but some lower income people who maybe don't have internet access because they don't want to pay for it, because there's a difference of that versus a necessity?
I mean, it seems like we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals.
There are a lot of hypotheticals, but I don't think they're stretches.
No, I'll give you that as well, but I mean, the one concrete example we have is, a couple years ago, when notifications weren't published the way they were supposed to, with the proper amount of time allotted, that pushed things back quite a bit. Again, releasing the city from the way we're bound right now, to give us the flexibility to advertise using a different form of communication. I think going over this last week, they have rules to fill here, and they'll advertise the way they see fit to get those positions filled.
Were you referencing the previous charter amendments that
Yeah,
didn't get?
so we had a-
See, that's not going to change even with this legislation, because as David pointed out last time, that's state law, that those have to go in the paper. So we're not even addressing that here, and the problem could still happen if the same thing happened again.
Well, I would like to point out, I did bring up another issue which did directly relate to this, that being when we were advertising for this go-around of boards and commissions, and that being that we have to meet these 60 and 30-day deadlines, that we did run into some issues with the bulletin as far as getting it posted and in that time frame of the 30 and 60 days. And keep in mind, this does not say the Twinsburg Bulletin. It says a newspaper of general circulation, which is either the Bulletin, the Akron Beacon Journal, or the Plain Dealer here. And we have had to post, and recently in the Akron Beacon Journal, to the tune of thousands of dollars in order to meet the deadline here, and I would bet anything, nobody read the Akron Beacon Journal about the Twinsburg postings. With all due respect, nobody is gonna tell me that that happened, because I just don't believe it. I think people do read it in the bulletin, and they read it as way of an article, a story, as compared to the classifieds, which maybe people read them, maybe they don't, but we probably daily get beat up at the city that we don't put enough online. I mean, people are going online to find out information at the city. They want everything online, and we're trying to comply with that, and we're going to do the best we can, but, you know, rarely do we get the calls of, how come you're not putting more in the classified section? Everybody wants it online, and we get it. It makes it much easier for us, and it gets the information out there immediately, and we can keep it out there daily, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, instead of one day on Thursdays when the paper comes out. So, to your point, I just want to bring out, it's not just because it's free in the bulletin. It could be the Plain Dealer or the Akron Beacon Journal and still comply with the charter.
Russ?
Gary?
If I could, I can't foresee, even if we made this change, not putting it in, but if we happen to miss a deadline, we don't screw up the whole system of what we're doing and put things off, and now we're delayed in commissions. I can't foresee, I don't care who the mayor is, I can't foresee just skipping over that. I mean, council is very adamant about wanting people to come out of the woodwork to apply for these positions, and when we don't get them, then we have problems. I can't see that just slipping by, or somebody just saying we're not gonna do it anymore.
Okay, I just don't want it to appear that the commission, the city is trying to take something away.
I understand. I'm just telling you my viewpoint
Okay.
as a council person.
Does anybody else have any input? Well, I believe the next point would be taking a vote as to whether or not we want to, is this the final in front of us, David?
This would be the final. If you approve this, this would be the exact version that goes on to council. Other than there'll be a number assigned to it, of course.
Right.
Sorry, just a quick question, and I believe I know the answer to my question, but when these charter amendments are proposed and they're published, we only put the new language, we don't put the old language, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, 1204 doesn't currently exist in any form, right?
In that.
Well, there is no,
That's a
yeah, right.
In this case, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution, and Dave, Mr. Maestros, what should we call it?
If we could specifically refer to them now as a section they're referencing, I have it at top on the draft.
Draft 12.04.
Yes.
Okay.
So Drew has made a motion to accept draft
12.04.
12.04.
I will second that.
Seconded by Doug. I will call the roll. Twyla Jones.
Yes.
Dave Albright.
Yes.
Doug Detweiler.
Yes.
Russell Sipin, yes. Dean Martin.
Yes.
Drew Ramito.
Yes.
Jenny Spira.
Yes.
Jay Magnus.
Yes.
All right, unanimously passed, 8-0. It goes to the people.
At least the 7, right?
What's that?
At least the 7.
Right.
Yeah.
The next one on my stack of drafts is 7A01. And let's go down. So I'm going to skip down to 7A01, procedure on page 2, the Article 7A, changes to zoning classifications. The city shall be divided into designated zoning classifications, i.e. residential, commercial, industrial, etc., and such zoning classifications may be further divided into subclassifications, i.e. R1, R2, C1, C2, I1, I2, etc. In each zoning classification, the city shall designate specific uses that are permitted and prohibited within each zoning classification. Any change of zoning classification or subclassification of any parcel or parcels of the property in the city, or in the uses permitted or prohibited in any zoning classification or subclassification within the city of Twinsburg must first be submitted to the Planning Commission for the consideration and report. In the event the City Council should approve any of the preceding requested changes upon the report of the Planning Commission, it shall not be approved or passed by the declaration of an emergency, and it shall not be effective, but it shall be mandatory that the same be approved by a majority vote of all votes cast of the qualified electors of the City of Twinsburg and of each ward in which the property so changed is located at the next scheduled election. Said issue shall be submitted to the electors of the city only after approval by council of a change of zoning classifications or subclassifications, or in the uses permitted or prohibited in any zoning use classification or subclassification. However, should council disapprove any such changes, the issue shall not be submitted to the voters. However, any change in the designation of zoning classifications or subclassifications, or in uses permitted or prohibited in any zoning use classification or subclassification of land hereinafter annexed to the city shall be subject to the requirements of Section 7A05 herein. Discussion.
And just to clarify, the reason that I put
Struck out?
all, yeah, there is one, I forgot, I didn't strike out that one in, so I will make that correction. But the reason I put all the section 7A01 through 7A05 versus I didn't do that in 12 was because it makes reference to that. And I felt that it'd be confusing to have a reference to 7A05 without it being part of the legislation and part of the posting. So that's why I included all of it in this legislation.
So kind of in follow-up to my previous question, these strikeouts would not show up. This would be cleaned up before.
That would be cleaned up. And Doug, I think I'd sent you, you were copied on the full version that had all the additions and deletions, the prior. So that's what this was converted to, except that one in should be out of there.
Got it.
I left one, this one.
Which in down here?
Yeah, there's one down. That has the straight through. so I didn't take it out.
Correct.
I have absolutely no problem with this, because I know a question that I was concerned about that was answered satisfactorily was, you know, if something is residential, but we want to take something that is one level right now and somebody wants to develop apartments somewhere, that would change the subclassification, and a subclassification would have to go to a vote of the people. And I can't see anything that anyone would question in here. Does anybody have an opinion on this?
I think it clarifies, so,
So do I.
yeah, makes it
Yeah,
clear
I agree with Twyla.
than before.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because that was the main goal,
Yeah.
is to get clarity around this.
Right.
So I think it's done that.
Yes, and a very good job. I make a motion to put draft 7A01 presented today, April the 7th, and forward this to council. Do I have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Twyla. I will call the roll. Twyla Jones.
Yes.
Dave Albright.
Yes.
Doug Detweiler.
Yes.
Russell Sipin, yes. Dean Martin.
Yes.
Drew Ramito.
Yes.
Jenny Spira.
Yes.
And Jay Magnus.
Yes.
Passed unanimously, 8-0. David, would you pick up the important parts in this one in 405?
Yes, 405 dealing with powers of the mayor, the second full paragraph there being, the mayor shall serve as the director of public safety for the city, and he/she shall serve in that capacity unless and until the mayor appoints another individual to serve as the safety director. That is a new full paragraph that's in there. And the only other change in this entire section is in that next paragraph, where it now says, all appointive officers shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor. For whatever reason, the prior language stated, specifically carved out two people, that being,
The Director of Public Safety and the
Director of Public Service. And all appointed officers. So it didn't quite make sense that it'd pick out two and then include all of them, so we just took those two out and made it all. Those are the only changes in that entire section, powers of the mayor. Now, if I could, and I'll throw this to the commission for your input, I went back and forth on this, that being that there are no other changes. There's no other changes to the legislative powers of the mayor, judicial powers, or the salary of the mayor. So the question arises, you know, I debated whether or not I included those because my guess is the vast majority of the voting public does not know what the current charter reads. So they don't know if that's new language, if that's something presented, if they look at that and say, oh, the mayor's going to have judicial powers now? Well, the mayor's had judicial powers since 1957. It's not new, but I don't know. You
Yeah,
know,
Russ, I'm sorry. That was the question I had is, you know, if we include all this, I'm just concerned that people are gonna think it changes and all of a sudden now the mayor is going to be paid 7% more than everyone else when that's been status quo.
Correct.
You know, I would just like to have in there what's gonna be changed, not to confuse everyone.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. And I don't know, in the past, have we always included the entire section in the,
Well,
in the legislation?
You try to cut it off at a point where it makes sense, you know, because most of our sections, our charter sections, are short sections. 405 is a little longer, and that's why, I mean, it had an A, a B, a C, and a D. And I would have absolutely no problem of just presenting Section A, because that's the only section that's been amended. But I presented it in this form to you to kind of have this discussion and see what you guys think.
As a voter, I would say it's overwhelming
Right.
with how long it is, and I don't know what I'm voting for.
Right.
If it was cleaned up to this is
Well,
what
isn't-
I'm voting for,
Can,
I'd understand it better.
As a voter, though, David, the only way they're going to see all of this, this won't be on a ballot. The only thing will be that, which we don't have here, is what you've been, oh, yeah, the proposed charter amendments shall Section 405 of Article 4 of the Charter of the City of Twinsburg be amended to establishing the powers of the mayor. That would be the only thing on the
Well,
actual
this
ballot.
this would actually be presented to the voters in the voting booth, okay?
Oh, okay.
It would have the full language. The issue that's ultimately presented is, shall Section 405.
Gotcha.
Okay, but
That's
this will
the
be
question.
there
That's
for those who choose to read it.
in the sentence that you just read, could the proposed charter amendment, could you insert the word executive to establishing the executive powers of the mayor?
Well, I think if this commission says, let's just have executive, then I'd absolutely do that. If we just leave A in there, then I'd say, yeah, to amend the executive powers of the mayor.
Okay,
That cleans it up considerably.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
absolutely. Great idea. So if you do add that executive in there, then I'm okay with just having Section A in there of
Okay.
405.
So that's what we're gonna do?
And
Any objections to that or discussion?
Really good idea.
Russ, just a sidelight on that. When we do something like this, we spend a lot of time putting out information of exactly what it means. And I know I go around, I talk to people, I usually go to the senior center, and we give an explanation. So we spend time trying to make sure, plus we put it in the paper too, exactly
Right.
what the changes are. So the info will be out there prior to this going on the ballot if it does.
That's an excellent point. We will put in the paper a red line version of the charter and the proposed amendments. That will be in the paper. We do that, you know, beforehand, leading up to the election to make it clear. It'll have the way it reads now and what's being proposed, so.
Okay. I'm okay with this. So I will make a motion
Yeah,
to accept
and then-
draft 4.05 as we have amended it by just including Section 4.05, Section A, and included in the synopsis of the proposed charter amendment to add the word executive before the word powers of the mayor. So it would read, to establishing the executive powers of the mayor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dean. I will call the roll. Twyla Jones,
Yes.
Dave Albright,
Yes.
Doug Detweiler,
Yes.
Russell Sipin, yes. Dean Martin,
Yes.
Drew Ramito,
Yes.
Jenny Spira,
Yes.
and Jay Magnus.
Yes.
Passed, 8-0. David, I'm going to defer 4.04 to you two.
Okay. 4.04 is our discussion and attempt to clarify the succession plan or the filling the vacancy in the office of the mayor. As you recall, the prior language stated council president, and then didn't really have any clarity should the council president say no and what direction you would go from there. My interpretation would have been that if the council president says no, or is unable or unwilling to fill the vacancy in the mayor, then it would go to a vote of the remaining members of council, which would set us up with an even number, 6 people voting. So what this does, and this is solely in the event of a vacancy as compared to the mayor on vacation or gone, then it's council president fills that role. It goes to the council president. If he or she is unwilling or unable, goes to the council vice president. If he or she is unwilling or unable, it goes to a vote of all members of council. that being all
Yep,
7
and that word's in there.
And it sets up that whoever that person is to be the acting mayor shall serve in that capacity. If the next election is within 6 months, they'll serve until that election and then run. If it's outside of 6 months, there will be a special election to fill the balance of the term.
Okay. Any discussion? I think we were all clear on this the last time, and well, I will make a motion that the draft as presented to us, 4.04, be accepted.
I will second that.
Seconded by Doug. I will call the roll. Twyla Jones,
Yes.
Dave Albright,
Yes.
Doug Detweiler,
Yes.
Russ Sipin, yes. Dean Martin.
Yes.
Drew Ramito.
Yes.
Jenny Spira.
Yes.
And Jay Magnus.
Yes.
Passed. That's it. Now, I think, was this Article 8, nominations, elections, and qualifications?
That is what we discussed last week, and that's the draft being presented to you for discussion. I think it's
Changing one word, September.
changing one
There
word.
we
I
go.
think that's clear. That at least is what I took out of the last meeting.
So if you remember, we had discussed, and I'm sure you all do, but just to reiterate for the record, that May apparently could be too far in advance to hold a primary election, because you could end up with a sitting mayor who, in essence, is a lame duck and may not be inspired to actually do their job because they are not even going to have the chance of getting reelected. So we saw keeping the primary and moving it from May until September. I am absolutely okay with that.
You know, Russ, the other thing, you know, even though, I mean, they might still be excited to do the job, but the people might not have confidence in them. So that's the other reason I like this, that, you know, we won't have a lame duck for 6 to 7 months. I mean, you might have an inspired person, but one that got 20% of the vote in the primary and,
Right.
you know, doesn't have the confidence of the people.
So I am okay with this. Are we going to request final legislation? Is that, or are we just gonna go ahead, we can pass?
Well, 2 things. First of all, it's certainly not my goal to create more meetings for you, but I think you're going to have one more meeting because there's one other issue that we'll talk about, and that's concerning the civil service changes, which you don't have before you tonight, but there's a reason for that. Civil service meets on Thursday this week. I had some early on when you guys, I knew you guys were going to be seated. I talked to civil service that there's a charter review sitting, you know, any discussion, and I'd really like to present that. We only have 2 members right now. Maybe council will appoint a third. I know they're doing some interviews tomorrow. But they meet on Thursday. I'd really like to present changes to the civil service portion of the charter to the Civil Service Commission to get their input so I could report to you guys. So maybe we can have a goal of, I can get this in resolution form in addition to that in resolution form at your next and maybe last meeting as a commission, but that'll be up to you. The only other thing, as I sit here and look at 801, it has just occurred to me that this election will always occur the day after Labor Day. And I just want to throw that out there if that brings any concerns to anybody, that because it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in September, so it didn't occur to me until just now as I looked at it.
Well, yeah, I
Like
would-
just now.
I think it's a non.
You know, we had also talked last time about the fact for taking out a petition to run for mayor, it only requires
25.
75 days before the primary. However, for council, it requires 90 days. So if someone did run in the primary, well, a council person should want to run for mayor and run in the primary, and were out, say there were 3 of them running, they were out, they have passed the deadline for running back for their council position again. If the primary was held in August, they would still have time. That's still effectively moving it back 3 months. But any council member who might be attempting to run for the office of mayor would still have time. They would meet that 90-day window to still then run for their council seat.
Can you not file to run for council? Can you not file to run for 2 seats? I mean, senators run for president. No, you can't?
Well, the problem is you'd be running for both at the same time versus holding one seat and running for another.
And the problem is, what if you were elected to
You-
both?
You'd know after the primary if you weren't in the top 3.
But if the primary was in September, you don't have 30 days.
I mean, if you filed to run for both, you
Oh.
cannot file to run for both, and
Oh,
then
no, they won't let you.
No, you can't. Okay.
So my feeling is, if we want to bring the primary in closer to the general election, that we would set up, if there was a need, that the primary would be in August. Otherwise, you have the potential, you might have a very good council person who has experience, who you're eliminating from your council because they have attempted to run for mayor.
No question, I agree with you, but I'm not sure August would do it because August, 90 days prior to the November 4th, 2014 election will be August 14th, or
Well,
August
it would
4th.
be what? That would be the second Tuesday in August.
Right, and that's
So it
the
should,
same day. I mean,
well,
you wouldn't have, I mean, election day is the day you'd have to file your petitions.
I don't think so, because there's 31 days in October.
Well, we're talking, then it'd be a day. I mean, you'd have to
Right,
have.
so they'd have, but they could go the next day. They'd have to have their petitions ready.
Right,
to
and that,
put
I
them
guess
in
that's
the
the
next
question.
day.
Can you circulate petition? You know, you could circulate them for both.
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't circulate the petitions. But that way you're not eliminating that council person from council, from still having the ability to run for council if we do that.
Yeah, you know, I don't have.
Would you say that again at the microphone?
No.
I'm kidding.
You want me to?
What I'm saying is that you have certain seats on council that do not line up with the mayoral election, so that those council members could run for the primary, win it, run for mayor, lose the mayor, and not have any effect on their council seat. They're still a sitting councilman. You know, they can run that whole gamut and not have any effect on them. However, the ones that do line up with the mayoral election, what she's saying is we got to choose.
How many of those seats
Half
are
of
there, do you know?
There's
I think
4.
there's 4.
Four?
Four that line up with the mayoral election.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would take those 4 If it's a September, and yeah, there wouldn't be the potential
No, there's
to-
not enough
to
time.
apply. So we'd take those four, if they had any interest in running at all, and basically remove them from, you'd have a whole new sitting council, basically, because if those people chose to run. But anyway, just,
Gary, do you have any opinion on how this affects a councilman's ability to run for mayor or?
Well,
Jenny brings up a great point.
well, it affects it just the way Mr. Yates said.
Right.
And if you were in that position, you'd have to make a choice. If you're in the other position, you could file and still be.
So it's really not fair to.
Well,
certain-
it's the case now, though, in a sense, because you have people staggered terms. Some people, depending what seat they have, if they want to run for mayor now,
Right.
they're going to have to give up their seat, and if they're not going to run, they don't have to give it. So it doesn't really change anything as far as that goes. And, you know, and one thing, Mr. Yates, just before you go, I'm not sure how much empathy I have, because right now, we've got this musical chairs thing where, we have one council person ran the last 3 elections. He ran, had a seat, he ran for another seat, he ran, then he ran again. So in 3 elections, he's run for council. It's like a musical chairs game. If you really want to be mayor and be a leader of this city, I think you have to have skin in the game. And so it doesn't change that some people have to give up their seat now.
You have to have
It's the
skin in
same
the
deal.
game if you're one of those 4 people,
Yeah.
but the other 3 don't
the
have.
other three
Right.
don't, right?
Yeah, I
But-
mean, and that doesn't change with this primary necessarily, because those people still have to give up their seats, that's what I'm saying.
And I think those of us that.
No, you don't have to give up your seat. If you're a sitting council person, you don't have to give up your seat to run for mayor.
If your council seat is on opposite term of the mayor, if you're one of those 3, you could run in 2015, and if you lost, you're still council the next day. It's not going to affect that.
Yeah, whereas the 4 that line up with the mayoral election, if you win the primary and you move forward with running for mayor, yeah, you're making that choice. You do have skin in the game at that point,
Right.
because there's no turning back for
Right.
council.
Right.
Yeah, so.
So,
But
worst
from a
case,
primary standpoint, the way that it's proposed in September, I think you're saying it discourages council member that may be qualified candidates to run for mayor because they couldn't run for their council seat at that point. They're giving up everything for a shot at the primary, which there's no guarantee you're coming out of the primary. I think that's all you were
Right.
trying to
so you
say.
could potentially lose 4 council members if 4 were going to run for mayor. I
Yeah,
mean,
if you had
I mean,
if you had 4 run, I mean, given one of them probably is going to come out of it, but yeah, you could lose 3 that couldn't run at that point. Then you've got either a bunch of people running or however whatever you may have it that
Right, or you have,
months later.
you basically have 4 people that may be qualified to be a very good mayor down the road, whose hands are kind of tied because they don't want to take that chance, because they want to remain active in city government.
And that's how, what I was saying was, that's how it's always been before this primary came about in the May. Before you had a primary, that's how it always was. I'm not saying I was right or wrong, but that's how it was. You had to give up your seat to run, and staggered. And that's how it is. I mean, I think Aurora has staggered terms. It's the same for them. You
The
have to
only
give up
problem-
the seat if you're gonna
The
run.
only problem I see with what we're kind of crafting here is the inequality between the 4 and the 3. That part's troubling to go, like, so wait a second,
That fair?
Yeah, it's not fair to these 3 are good to go, and these
Right.
4 have to, they gotta decide. So that part just kind of doesn't sit well with me,
And the
whether it's right or wrong.
right.
Just that it's not equal.
Right, and the citizens, through their right to vote, decided that we should have a primary. The only thing I think is the problem is that it is quite far
Yeah.
before the November election. As the mayor pointed out, you're basically spending your whole year working and going door to door and advertising, and it is a lot of work when you're running for a position. And it's still certainly cutting down the time quite a bit, but still giving those 4 council people the ability, by just changing it to August.
Well, are August elections a problem, though? Schools aren't open? How do the polls, how would an August election work?
We've had them,
That's true.
Yeah.
But we have to close the school, but they're in operation.
yeah, but
The
that-
buildings are, and we've had August, you know, you'll see school board, or levy elections show up on August.
Yeah.
Yeah,
ballot.
last week, we discussed August, and, you know, one of the drawbacks we talked about was vacation. You know, you might get a lighter turnout in August, people are on vacations. Once school's in, your odds are better that you're gonna get a better turnout.
So because I'm a visual person, I'm still with what what's being proposed here right now as it exists with the changing the primary from May to September. We have a September mayoral primary. When do people have to register with the Board of Elections to get into, well, what I'm reading here is,
75 days prior to that date.
so it says 70, okay, so, why am I reading in 801? What am I missing here, David? First paragraph.
The first paragraph talks about elective offices other than office of the mayor. And then it sets forth the 90 days and the signatures and the timing of the petitions. Okay, the 1, 2, 3rd paragraph. I'm sorry, the last paragraph, each person desiring to become candidate for office of the mayor shall not later than 4 p.m. on the 75th day before the primary election day.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's where that's coming from. So depending on what day it is in September, you backtrack 75 days. It's
Where's that put us in general, if we had to, so I could put it on my nice visual timeline here?
That can put you at the end of May or beginning of June. Let's see. 30, 60. Middle of June?
So 150 days. We go back further than that, because you got
May.
June,
June.
July,
May.
August,
Yeah,
September.
May, I'm
maybe
sorry.
May.
May.
Maybe the 3rd week of May, maybe?
No. August, July.
Let's call it in May, May,
September.
Let's look at this a
This is
different way.
why we were in May.
But, you know, we're talking about the primary too.
July.
The only time we would have a
September.
primary is if there are 3 people running. If only 2 people are running, there's not even going to be a primary.
right,
Right, but we don't know.
all right, so
So roughly the middle of June, you would have to file, and you're going to know if you're going to have a primary by the middle of June, the filing deadline.
A quick question, does the Board of Elections come up with the days prior to a primary that you must file? Or is it in our charter that we came up with the days?
Well, it's in our charter, but they have that at the Board of Elections. They'll have an elections calendar, and that once they know the day, you know, if it's September 4th, they'll post their calendar at the beginning of the year saying June 15th is the deadline for 75-day.
But did they come up with that 75 days? Or did we come up with that 75 days?
We came up with that 75 days, but it's not an uncommon number,
Is it possible to change that date?
to 90. I mean,
Those are the only days. What I'm looking at here is manipulating the numbers
yeah,
instead
here's
of...
basically what you have with the Board of Elections. You can have charter issues are 60 days prior to the date of election. You have candidates and issues 75 or 90 days. So it's either 60, 75, or 90 days prior to the date of election.
Council seat was shortened to 75. It still doesn't get September, though, right? Because first week of September is 60 days before the first week of November.
Right.
So it'd have to be 45, and that's not an option.
I mean, right, it's not an option. I mean, you can go,
Too many pieces.
I mean, you can maneuver the days, but I'm sure there's a way of coming up with it, but you're just, you know, it depends on, right. Depends, do you make it more complicated to try to prevent what we're trying to prevent, which I think ultimately what we're trying to prevent is the lame duck mayor, I think is what we, or just the length of time that somebody could campaign, but.
And I'm also looking at the potential for eliminating seasoned council people. I mean,
Well, right now, we don't
right-
do that.
Okay, say the mayor doesn't run again. Who is generally going to run for mayor? A lot of times it's going to be your council people. So maybe we end up with 3 council people running for mayor. And only one of them's going to make it. But all 3 are going to be off council by doing it in September. So you're going to end up with 3 brand-new people on council in December. where if you allow them the time they need so that they can still file, they can still run, and we don't lose that experience. And I think the experience is a really important thing, the continuity and the knowledge of what goes on.
Congress has a lot of experience in continuity. I think if somebody wants to be mayor, though, you know, they want to be a leader of this city, well, then that's what they have to do. You know, it's almost like any job when you apply. You got to give up your other job. I mean, you got, and I understand that the you know, the 4 people who have certain seats are a disadvantage, but look what's happened in previous elections. Sitting council people have run for other seats, and they put themselves in a position to run for mayor where they don't have to give up their seat. They've done that too. So, I mean, there's some jockeying you can do.
Yeah, I don't know how we address it. Like I said before, the only problem I have with it is that it's not the same for all 7.
Right.
And I don't know how, you know.
Yeah, so I think, to me, it comes down, what's the bigger issue? Is that the bigger issue, or is the bigger issue that we have May versus September for a primary election? If it's, you know, if it's not that big of a deal to have those extra months, then we leave it. But if we say, you know, I think we really need to have less months of having a lame duck, then we have to change it. I don't think we can fix all the problems of it. At least I don't have a solution to do it.
Yeah, I think where I'm sitting, I don't think September is the answer
Right.
because of the 4 people. I think, to me, it's either May or August, unless there's another option on the table, but I think August is a fair proposal.
Right, and I
Yes,
don't
there's
think,
vacation, but it is what it is.
yeah, I don't think people, you're saying people have to make a decision, they do one or the other. Well, they don't have to. If we change it to September, we are forcing that decision on 4 of the people. Because right now, if we leave it with May, they don't have to make that decision. They can run in the primary and still then run for their council seat. So they don't have to make that decision.
We're limited
And if
to
we move it to August,
Yeah.
we are
What's the
bringing
bigger
down that
problem?
time period.
Probably a fair chance it won't get through council.
Right,
if we leave it
but-
this way.
Right.
But if we move it to September, we're basically saying to them either or. So that is our decision on what date we pick, regardless of what the people.
Mr. Maestros, I know last time we talked a little bit about how some other cities do it, because Mr. Metropolis, he's here tonight, and he had a recommendation about a runoff, you know, and I don't know, have we looked into that at all?
Well, I think the discussion was taking it to November and depending on having a runoff if there wasn't a 51% or 50+1 victor in when you have more than 3 candidates. But what that essentially is doing is getting rid of the primary and then having a runoff. And I think as
Which
is
could
already
put us into December after the mayor is supposed to assume office on December
Right.
1st, I think was an issue too that we had.
And I think, you know, it's been brought up that the primary, I think, has been put on the ballot twice and was approved by the electorate to have the primary. So, I mean, essentially, you'd be getting rid of the primary and turning the general election into a primary.
Okay, so the other cities that have primaries, I mean, can we dig in that a little bit? I mean, do they do September, or?
There are some, I can tell you, there are some that are September, and there are some that are May. You know, and for all the reasons that we've already discussed, okay, all those reasons of September being closer to the election, there are some that have that if you have a primary and you have 50+1, there is no, you're the mayor. So, and we've discussed that here too
Right.
with this commission. So, I think you have all the options, and I think you know what the issues are. It's which problem do you want to throw out there?
And I think just for thought purposes, there's a lot more that just going into running for mayor than just going door to door and asking people to vote for you. I mean, there's fundraising efforts. There's other things that go on that people need time to put together. I mean, the mayoral election is, you know, a $30,000+ commitment for a candidate. So, you know, keep that in the back of your mind that if you're going to say, okay, to councilman, I want you to go do fundraising and do campaigning and do whatever expense you're going to have for September for a chance of not even running for mayor, all the people that are donating to that cost too is also going to sit back and go, well, you know, well, I'm supporting someone that may have a chance to run for mayor or may not. And I understand the lame duck situation. I think we have a mayor here that I think is going to fulfill her duties if she decides not to run or not. But at least if you have it if it retains in May, then there's efforts that go on before May, but then there's a time period that more efforts can go on in fundraising and campaigning and doing things. And really from May to November is not a huge amount of time. I mean, I've been through it in a council election, and it goes by very quickly. But anyway, just so you can think about that, I guess.
Thank you, Ted.
You know, and that point that Mr. Yates makes about the monetary thing is, you know, something that I was addressing before, you know, which scares me because that's why I brought up, you know, if you have multiple people running in a primary and someone gets 51% of that vote, so whether it's 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, somebody gets 51% of the vote, do you really need to have another election? See, because, you know, if somebody got 51% of the vote and the other 2 or 3 people, you know, didn't even get 50, you have to have another election. And that's what scares me about those 2 elections is what you brought up is the monetary part of it. You know, then somebody that can run in a primary and then afford another election, I mean, that's a lot of dollars. You're talking 30,000. It could be 60 by the time you're done with 2 of those if it's close. So, I don't know, like Mr. Maestro said, I mean, they've done it all different ways. They have people, if you get 51% of the vote, there is no other election. They have what Mr. Metropolis suggested, you know, a runoff. They have May, they have September. It's just, I guess, what's the worst, you know, what's the worst evil? And you know, personally, I just think 7 months of a lame duck, somebody that may have lost confidence, you know, that's a long time. But I don't know what the answer is.
If you don't want a lame duck, you just have the mayor goes to the general, and the primary is for who the candidate against the mayor is. That's the other option that we haven't discussed.
What's that?
The mayor, if the mayor, the sitting mayor if the mayor files and determines he or she is running, then the mayor will automatically go to the general with whoever comes out of the primary. That prevents the lame duck, that being that no matter what, the sitting mayor, if they are running, will be in the general election in November, and the primary in May is for whoever's going to run against them.
Yeah.
See, Mr. Sipin, one word from May to September. That's all we changed.
Yeah.
Right. Oh. So I'm not sure where I sit on this. Everyone's looking at me. Really?
How about if we bring it to a vote? My feeling is that we move this forward to a resolution with changing of the word September to August. So that would be my motion. And depending on how the commission feels.
I got a quick question. If you did that, would it allow the city council members to still apply?
They would
Is the
have
time
one
work?
day, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
I'm against the August election, so.
Right, you'd have to be ready.
Just in case.
Right.
I don't think that would.
Right. It creates that situation. You have to circulate the second set of petitions for council and have them ready to file the next day.
Because council has 60 days, right, to,
Council seat has 90 days, which would put you into the first week, beginning of August. It would open, I mean, the reality of it is, are you gonna who knows? You have 3, 4, 5 people running in a mayoral primary. It could be, it could be a recount. I mean, you're talking about an August primary that, you're gonna have to get a board of elections to determine who the top 2. I mean, it could be close enough for a recount. By the next day, you might not know. And then what do you do?
all I'm gonna say is I voted against the primary because we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Why did you
But-
vote against the primary?
Because I don't see it as a necessity to have a mayor or any elected official win by 51% or more. If you win, you win. That was my opinion at the time. But nobody listened to me.
What would happen, you just brought up a scenario, what would happen? Say it's too close to call that day, would the person who's on the fence have to either file and withdraw from the mayoral count, or what, I mean, what, we don't wanna create,
Well, I think it'd create that problem, and if I'm the person would probably, if they did not know, file with the Board of Elections and hope the Board of Elections would let them file the petitions on a contingency depending on the recount. But you're at the mercy of the Board of Elections, which then you have no idea of how they're gonna determine that.
I'm back to May.
Yeah, this is probably why
I'll
it's
t-
May.
And I'll tell you, and I want to make sure before we even vote on anything that the numbers are right, because we're all doing some math in our head here, and we're saying, well, all right, if we changed it to September, that would put us sometime in May. Actually, no, it would put us to the first week of April. You know, I'm counting days here. You know,
No,
if-
that would be 75 days?
no, it's 150 days for the mayor, correct?
No.
No,
Start.
Oh,
no.
no, good gravy. How many?
that's when you can start getting signatures, that's
yes.
all.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it's 75.
70, okay,
Right.
then,
You've got that window to get 25
gotcha.
signatures.
So, all right.
Hey, Russ, could I just get clarity on something?
Yes,
Did you say good gravy?
I did. say
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
It's a Bedford thing.
Yeah. Your side of town.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You notice he's not clarifying who's speaking this meeting.
Russ Sypian said good gravy.
Yes, I did.
We could table it, you know, and,
See
I don't know, I don't know if we have to vote on it today. I mean, we could think, you know, noodle it over a little bit.
I would really
We'll
like
go
to,
over with
I
the-
would like everybody to sit down and take a look at this and whip out your calendar and see what you think could make sense about moving the primary if we move it, or we'll have the discussion at the next meeting. Maybe we don't move it, but let's just look at this and come back with, I don't think I don't want to just say, let's take a vote on August and have somebody vote no.
Agree.
But we can have another meeting. This is not our last meeting, and that would be my opinion, but I'm only one person, so.
No, I'd just like to make a comment. I mean, we're spending a lot of time on this, and I know it's very important. But this is definitely going to go to, if it does go to council, obviously, the 4 people that are in line with that mayoral vote or election are going to be very concerned about it, whether or not it's going to go forward from there.
Mr. Maestros, you brought up a point. I'm kind of on with Drew Mito on this when it comes to having an effective leader at the helm. And I think perhaps if keeping the date, for argument's sake, during the month of May, but including some type of caveat or clause that stated that the incumbent mayor then must run with whoever came out of the primary, that might, you know, keep enough pressure or ensure that, hey, the mayor, I mean, you're in the game here. Got to keep giving it 100%. I think that kind of solves. or
Yeah, I think
does
that's-
the best of
That's the
marrying all-
fear, is that the sitting mayor loses in the primary, and then he or she is done at that point. What's the incentive to do the job for the next 6 months?
Yeah.
If they're not out at the primary, then it's just like any other election. I mean, they're up until they run.
Yeah. Might be a good compromise.
Could
Now we-
you, sorry,
Go ahead.
could you work up that language maybe for our next meeting as an option?
Could certainly do that. Are there any other options you
So
want?
basically, would that, then it would only be, say if we had a May primary, the only people running in the May primary would be to select who's going to run against the incumbent? So the mayor wouldn't even have to run at that point
In the primary,
in the primary,
correct.
because the mayor was guaranteed being one of the 2 people going to the November election.
That prevents the lame duck. It
Okay.
opens up
It
some other
prevents lame
issues.
duck, but it opens up a whole
It
other
does.
can
It
of
opens up
worms.
other
Yeah,
issues, no
yeah.
question about it.
It does ensure that whoever's elected mayor will have 51% of the vote. It does that too. You know, so, you know, when you think about why you want a primary, you know, I think the reasoning is, Russ, and you probably could speak on it, they probably wanted to make sure, like in Aurora, you had like 5 or 6 people run, and I think the winner got 38% of the vote. So that's one of the reasons you have a primary, is because you want to have someone that has the majority of the people the vote.
That was what was presented at the
Yeah,
time
so
to
that's,
us.
so Jay's recommendation, I mean, it does solve that problem. You know, it also solves the problem that any council person that's sitting on council can run. In the primary, nobody will lose their seat, so it solves that problem also.
It does, but I don't like the fact that somebody gets past the primary by default. Yeah, name another election that does that.
Well, they're gonna sit until December either way. It's not like they get into the office. I mean, they're gonna sit through December even if.
Well, right, they're gonna sit, but if we have 3 people that have expressed an interest in running for mayor, and one of them is the mayor, who's to say that those other 2 people could not capture more votes if they ran against the mayor? That's like saying we've got 3 people running for the President of the United States. You're the sitting president right now, so you don't have to go through the primary to represent your party, but these other 2 schmucks do. And that doesn't make sense to me. I don't think you get a pass. It deals with one problem, but it completely opens up.
And you mentioned earlier, looking at fairness, you're talking about people spending double the money trying to get that position, and the sitting mayor doesn't have to
Right.
do that.
He or she is saving money and, just waiting for the big time. I don't.
Right,
No.
Right.
that's right.
Well, they're not gonna.
You know, and I agree, there's no easy answer, but I gotta say, some of these suggestions I hear are better than a May primary. And 7 months with a mayor who possibly could have gotten 20% of the vote in the election and is gonna be mayor for 7 months. Boy, I don't like that option. I don't. That could be a disaster. But, so, Jay, I don't know if you still want that, to request that language be written up, or not, no?
No, Russ brought up a good point. But my thought was, when I made that statement, was taking all of these variables and trying to find the most equitable term.
Right.
Because we've been throwing the word around fair quite a bit. And, this is now fair, but now this is really unfair. And
Right.
where I am right now is
I would honestly like everybody to do a little bit of work over the next 2 weeks, and when we meet again 2 weeks from today, that we address this, and maybe there will be a solution. Maybe the answer will be to keep it in May. I don't know, but let's see what we can come up with between now and then, and see if we can do something. Okay? All right. Is there any new business?
Now, were we going to look at, we have, the civil service section, you're going to bring up with civil service
On
before you
Thursday morning, yes, and then
drop
I'll,
anything. We still have Park and Rec, and we
Which I'll-
also
New
have the
business.
summer recess.
Yeah, the Parks and Recs, absolutely. I think that's new business, because we truly we've only touched on it, so I'm gonna consider that new right now. And, Jenny, does everybody have
Yes,
what you had handed out?
Hey, Russ,
right.
I just wanna make sure that
That was just, the
there's
language
another item, I
from-
don't know if it's new or if it's old business. And Mr. Maestros was gonna, and the mayor, they were gonna talk about the boards and commissions and mayoral appointments, but I don't know if that's new or if that's old business. Because I don't know is there any, I guess that would be old business, because we talked about it already.
Let's talk about it. And then we'll get to, because I consider, well, you know what? The order we go in right now, I don't think truly matters, but if you'd like to address boards and commissions and appointments, David?
sure. Here's a discussion that I had with the mayor, coming out of that, is we talked about leaving planning commission as is, that being ward-specific and councilmatic, and then the other boards and commissions, figuring out some role of the mayor having some appointment authority. I mean, the reason we kind of separated that as planning commission's role in the designation and use of how all land is going to be used, and they recommend the powers that they have. We just felt that maybe leaving it that way. Some of the other boards and commissions, we're really looking to fill those, not that they're less important, but we're just, want the mayor to have some input, and the mayor quite often has contact with individuals that would want to run, but I don't think she was invested in it one way or another, and, whatever the commission decides to do on that. I mean, like I said, we talked about last week, this council, If the council asks the mayor's input, she'd be more than happy to give it. Sometimes council does it, sometimes they don't. For example, we've had this opening on civil service here for a couple months, and I know council's tried to find candidates, the mayor's tried to find candidates. You know, we beat the bushes, and whoever I think finds a qualified candidate and brings them to council, that person will be considered. It won't matter that it's the mayor's candidate or council or anything else. But you don't always get that cooperation that we have right now, so.
So, as it exists today, council appoints all boards and commissions.
Correct.
And the mayor has no input on any of those boards and commissions, other than voicing an opinion.
Right.
Again, what are we looking to do here as far as perhaps broadening the powers of the mayor? Is that our intent?
Yeah, some of the things I know the mayor has suggested she could appoint certain boards and commissions and council could appoint others. It was also brought up, I think Mr. Metropolis brought up, that boards and commissions are the recommending bodies to council. So since they are just recommending bodies who make recommendations to council, they serve the council and should be elected by the council. And as it stands now, the mayor does have input if she so chooses. So as far as, you know, whether the board wants to look at changing it and maybe allow the mayor, she doesn't feel, I think, invested now at this point because she can have an opinion, but she can't have a vote. Maybe, you know, looking at, do we leave it as it is? Do we recommend a resolution that gives the mayor a vote along with the members of council? You know, there's different
That could be
ways
one
we can-
option.
I mean,
That
there's
creates
different
potential
ways.
for a tie, though. There's 8 people then that would be voting. Do we give the mayor the power of confirming appointments? I think that was brought up years and years ago. Does council still appoint them, but does the mayor have to confirm them? And that is a way of giving the mayor a say.
That also, it is, speaking from my point of view, what I think it would be if I was the mayor and I had to confirm every one of those people. That is a lot of time sitting in on every single interview and in order to be able to do that. Of course, she'd have to do that too if she was going to vote. Or maybe on certain, maybe we could talk about giving her a vote on certain boards and commissions.
Has it been brought up which boards and commissions?
Like I said, I mean, we only really addressed, separated out planning from all the other boards and commissions. I mean, it's not uncommon if you look at other charters to say the mayor shall appoint and council confirm versus the other way around that you
Right.
discussed.
So right now, the only interest expressed would be in the planning commission?
I mean, that's the only one we specifically talked about because of their role and the importance of having ward-specific members on that commission. And, you know, the council members generally, even though it's not written anywhere, they have generally operated under the theory that the ward council person will make the appointment for the ward-specific candidates. And, you know, in order to protect that kind of privilege or discretion that those ward council people have, the mayor said, okay, well, what if we just stay away from the planning commission and address the others? But
Oh, so she's saying stay away from...
let council continue to appoint
Okay.
planning. Because I think there was some talk of getting away from ward-specific appointments other than planning. I mean, at first, I think you guys originally, early on, talked about that. I don't know if that went anywhere.
So we would be considering civil service, Board of Zoning and Appeals, Parks and Rec, Capital Improvement, Architectural Review Board, District Commission, Environmental Commission, and Charter Review Commission. Those would be the other ones that would be up for
Hey,
grades.
Russ?
I'm open to this. I think I personally don't have an opinion one way or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my thinking. You know, when you look at this memo that the mayor has dated 2009, I know you guys discussed it 5 years ago because I read those minutes. You know, all these different cities where the mayor appoints and council approves. I would just like, you know, we have it here where council does all the appointments, you know? I just thought a check and balance would be kind of nice. So I don't see where the mayor should appoint everyone, and vice versa, maybe the council shouldn't, where the mayor has some appointments on these boards. For instance, on this board, we have 9 people. And, you know, council could approve 7, and the mayor could have 2 people appointed. I just think it brings some, you know, right now, the city, you know, it's real copacetic, you know? But remember back a while ago?
Yeah.
How it was? Yeah. So to have more checks and balances, and we go back to that, where there's more, you know, it's more adversarial between council and mayor. I just thought mayor having some appointments to these would make sense. Then you have council appoint some and mayor appoint some. Check and balance.
I wouldn't disagree, but I honestly don't know which ones should be considered, or if the mayor wants to make a recommendation on which boards. I mean, I really don't know where to begin with this.
Yeah, and I can, I mean, just from experience, I've sat on a few boards, and, you know, I was on the golf board. I thought having a mayoral appointment there would make sense. You know, you have council appointments, you have a mayor. I was on capital improvements board. I think that could make sense too. What I'm talking about is if it was an adversarial situation, capital improvement board, I think it would benefit from having council choose some and a mayor choose some. I think this charter review commission, you know, I think you have 9 people, 7 could be council and 2 could be the mayor. If it was adversarial, I just think it's a check and balance, you know, it's just a blend. So, but again, I would think that, you know, maybe, I don't know if council and the mayor, or, you know, Gary's here, Mr. Sorese, sorry, Gary, and I've served on boards with you and Mr. Yates, and, you know, I don't know if they have an opinion on it, but, you know, one of them may be mayor someday. And it'd probably be nice to be able to appoint some people, so.
My opinion, as I stated at one of the previous meetings, is the mayor should be involved. I don't know necessarily straight out appointments. So what if there's 8 people voting? The chances of ties, by the time you get discussing 5 or 6 different candidates for positions, by the time it comes down to it, and usually what we do is, you know, everybody talks and says what they think and go around the room, and you sort of get a feeling of where it's going. Even if it's adversarial, I just don't see it as being that big of a deal. 8 people can vote. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Yates?
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I think in the past, from my experience doing this, it's been a very conversational type. I mean, there's been involvement from the mayor, there's been involvement from all the council members. You know, we take our time in these appointments. We all work together. We take into consideration if someone is opposed to a particular person or not, or, you know, I mean, it seems to be, now that's saying we've all, it's not been as adversarial as I know before me. But I think even in an adversarial situation, I think you probably are going to have some consensus, because we've got a great community. People want to get involved. We've got qualified people, so it's, you know, I don't see an issue with it. But yeah, I mean, whether it's 7 of us voting or 8 of us voting, you know, when we're discussing candidates and roles and trying to fill seats, I mean, we really, you know, it's more of a discussion than a vote kind of situation. So.
And even when, to use your term, when it was adversarial, we did the same thing, and the mayor would come in and tell her opinion. She was in many of those back 5, 6 years ago. She would come in when we were doing interviews. If it was something that she was concerned about, she would come in and state her opinion and be part of the discussion. And even then, we never had any problem. You know, we almost always come to an agreement. Well, we always come to an agreement one way or another.
Right.
And it's not always 100%, but people say how they feel, and then when you walk out, you know, it's over.
Now, putting yourself in the, in the mayor's shoes instead of council, if you're the mayor, would it be something that you would think that would make sense for you to be able to appoint some people to these commissions? Or,
I don't
Or
think,
not.
to me,
yeah,
that's not that big of a priority. The mayor is in charge of running the city. She appoints all department heads, and is in charge of supervision of all the departments and so forth. That's the big job. The boards and commissions, as important as they are as a supplement to the city, that's, to me, it's secondary. And I wouldn't be offended if I didn't get my way or somebody I knew didn't get on the board. And I don't think the present mayor would either. She would come in and definitely say her opinion, and then we would have a discussion.
I kind of agree, and even the council appointees, while we have ward appointments, it's not a, I mean, I don't feel like just that Ward 3 person that, I have representing Ward 3 on different different commissions is a representative of way I think up here, and I'm looking to, manipulate them to guide toward what I think is important, and I don't think the mayor would do that either. If the mayor had an appointment, I don't think that person would be, an internal, cancer that's there just to focus on what the mayor wants, even
A
if it's
mole.
a conflict.
I think is the word.
So I think I agree with Gary. I don't think it really matters, and I don't think we even look at council appointments as someone who's a representative. I think where our discussion comes and how we work with each other is, we may have a candidate that I know real well and Gary doesn't, and I can share everything I know about that candidate to help Gary understand that candidate a little bit better, and vice versa. That's kind of the communication that we have when we go through an interview and, we talk about a candidate. I mean, we're all kind of working together, and yeah, we may feel strongly about someone else, but, I don't know. We do seem to all kind of work together, and I don't think Gary looks at, and I don't either, as I appointed that person and they better kind of follow what I think is right for this community. None of us think that. We like, and we say this about council too, I mean, we don't all agree, but that's why we all sit up there, is because we should not all agree at times. I mean, that's why you have 7 people. If we all agreed all the time, you should have 1, and that's it. But
The fact of the matter is, we went through that with this very board. Very lively discussions for a long period of time. It was probably the toughest appointments we had and the most lively discussions. But in the end, we came to agreements.
It's because of you.
I just told Twyla it's 'cause of her.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. So, what are we?
So is it something that we should consider the mayor to have a vote, leave it status quo? The one thing is just so curious to me, and I'm not saying we're doing it wrong, but when you look at every city in Cuyahoga County, the mayor appoints. I mean, in Summit County, and then even in other counties, and I'm thinking, are we just smarter than everybody else? Which I've never been, so it's a new place to go. But or is because council approves, so I think they have a check and balance here in place. I think that's what it is. But I'm not saying it's broken. It's just curious to me that everyone else does it a different way in Summit County, and all these other communities do, and we're standing alone.
And this,
not that we're wrong, but
right, and this could be. I guess that if we want to answer the question as to why it was done this way originally, I don't even know who to go to.
Right.
So what was the thinking behind this? And I think somebody might tell us or has an opinion.
No, I think what Mr. Romito's coming up with is, if you go through the Ohio Revised Code, there's that section 705, and it outlines all the forms of government there are. And some people, when they wrote the charter, they just copied over what was in that and stuck it in there. And that became their charter, and they just copied over the code. And it says, I think what you're coming across is something that they call the federal system, but it's really not the federal system like we think of it in Washington, D.C., where the mayor appoints the department heads, and they're all confirmed. And some of this stuff in the federal system, and if you look at Macedonia's charter, they're all over the place. It says, but in some cases, the mayor is a member of the planning commission and appoints the members without confirmation, but he's not a member of the BZA, but he appoints the BZA members and they'll get confirmed. So I think what you came across was something called the quote federal system, which isn't what we think of inside the Beltway. It's something different. And it says, and I think these people just like copied that section of 705 over, and that became the charter, and they were happy with it.
But they reviewed it every 5 years,
But for
and they
some-
never changed it, you know?
because some people actually don't understand home rule. They
Right.
figure that's because that's in 705. They figure, okay, if we're going to have a city manager form of government, it's got to look like this. If we've got to have a strong mayor form of government, it's got to be like this. And I've had people who were long-term councilmen in Canton that I knew. They swore to me that if you had a charter, you had to have 7 council members. I told them, no, that's not true. You can have as many as you want. Macedonia has 6. Cleveland has 21 now. Akron has 10. But there are a lot of people that just don't understand that because you vote on it here, you take some home rule authority, and you can have 9 council members.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make it a pure federal system. You can make it a weak mayor system. You can make it anything you want as long as it's, quote, a Republican form of government.
Right.
That's that. I do have one question for Mr. Mastros, but.
Mr. Metropolis, you can go right ahead and ask it right now if you'd like to.
Okay. All right, then I'll stop talking. The mayor's term of office begins on December 1st. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Subject to the confirmation of the election, but yes.
Right. When I was on council, our term of office began on December 1st. And now it's like a floating day. It's the
Yes.
first meeting. I don't recall ever voting on that. I think it became maybe a matter of custom. So I don't ever remember seeing a charter amendment saying council's term shall begin their first meeting. It was always December 1st, and I think it was a matter of custom that it just got changed. I don't think it was ever I don't recall seeing a charter amendment on that. But I could be right, I could be wrong.
In
Okay,
fact,
that's it. I
in
promise.
one of our recent elections, that came up, we were talking about, and called down to Summit County.
It absolutely came up. Yeah.
And I think we were talking about the day of the first meeting in December.
The problem that we ran into is we scheduled first meeting the first Monday, or the first Tuesday in December for the swearing in of the new council members, and there was an issue of whether or not we were going to have a period where we did not have 7 members of council, that being terms of the outgoing members expire, and we haven't sworn in the new members yet. And Summit County, when we called down there, basically their response was, we've been waiting for you to call. We saw that too. We have, there isn't that definitive date that states, when the new seat begins. I mean, every other seat that you run for, if you run for an elected office, seat commencing on January 4th, 2000 and whatever. I mean, there's a specific date in there. Sometimes you'll see council seats don't begin on a specific date, but will say on the first, shall commence on the first Monday after the certification of the election, or some definitive where on any calendar year you could determine when that council seat begins. We don't really have that, and I think you're right. I mean, I don't know that December 1st was a date and it was changed. I don't
know of it ever being changed, but,
Right.
Isn't, this is just a wondering question, but isn't that just really a formality? Like at noon on this day, the president takes office.
Correct.
Because he hasn't raised his right hand. At noon,
Right.
previous one was out, and this guy's in. Just because you haven't raised your right hand it's a formality. Because some places are January 1st, but that's a holiday, and they do everything on the 2nd, but if something happened on January 1st, I
Yeah.
think they go to the new mayor or the new councilman, not the old one.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was talking to somebody that had an election, and they were supposed to take over January 1st, and they went in near the end of December and all got sworn in.
At midnight,
Yeah.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah. The provision that we currently have is council members elect shall assume office at the first regular meeting of council in December next following their election. Okay? So we know when they begin, and that wasn't the problem. It's the first regular meeting of council in December. Now, the next sentence in our charter is the one that creates the problems. The regular term of a council member shall be 4 years. So if you begin on the first meeting, let's say that's December 4th, 2014, and 4 years later being is it December 4th, 2018, or is it the first meeting of council? Because that was the problem we had election cycle or two ago, where because the Board of Elections prints term beginning, term ending. So they would print an ending term, that being 4 years from the date of the first council meeting. And then when we got to that date, it was a period of time beyond that term. So maybe that's something, not to throw another.
Is that something that we do want
Item
to
on your plate.
consider
You might
about
wanna-
getting a
you might-
specific date for council terms?
You might want to go back and look at that provision.
I agree.
Because that was the issue. We were all comfortable with the beginning, the commencement date, that being the first Monday or the first regular council meeting of December. We could define that at some point in time. But when does it end, when it says the term shall be 4 years? Or shall run until the next first meeting in December, 4 years later, or
And
something.
the reason that it's that date is because that's the first meeting in December where you could swear everybody in. So if you made it December 1st, then the swearing in would have to be regardless of what day of the week held on that day.
Would the swearing in have to be held on December 1st all the time, or would that
Well, what I would
Metropolis
suggest
said
is,
that's a formality?
well, it's a formality, but it's a formality that involves the person swearing them in and the members, which could be
Right.
on a Saturday or a Sunday. If you have it December 1st, as compared to the first Tuesday of December following the election. Okay, then you could specifically schedule a council meeting, have the swearing in, have the new council take place, and even have the organizational meeting if they so choose. But you have a date certain that you know will be on a Tuesday versus
Right.
unknown. And I've been places, I've been a law director where it was January 1st, and for 4 straight years I attended swearing-ins on New Year's Day, and I would not suggest going that route.
No, I wouldn't
It
either.
was a pretty miserable process. So. And if I could, Mr. Metropolis brought up an interesting point about charters, and let me just throw this out there. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, when everybody was putting charters together, you either had strong mayor or weak mayor form of governments in these charters. A lot of cities took a weak mayor, strong council form of government because a mayor wasn't intended to be a full-time mayor at the time, and it was just going to be more of a ceremonial, and you wanted council making all the policy decisions. And as these things progressed, where the cities became more complicated to run, and you go to a full-time mayor and a strong mayor form of government, some of these other weak mayor form of governments things lingered in the charter where they have no power to appoint this or no involvement in that. So you do see some of these things as they progress over the years of some of the issues, and like Gary and Ted both say, it wasn't a hot-button issue of the mayor not having a vote on those, so it was probably never pushed since this charter was originally drafted of who appoints it. But my guess is that was a remnant, a scrap from a weak mayor form of government that was originally drafted when we had a part-time mayor.
Right.
And now you get these things with city managers and other things that they're all kind of crunched together into a charter that doesn't make sense sometimes depending on what issues you have to cross. So that very well could be how that happened.
So before we get back to the boards and commissions, do we have any further discussion? Do we want to request that Mr. Maestros present us with something on a specific date for the council term to begin?
Oh, I think that's probably a good idea.
I think that makes sense,
mean,
right?
And, yeah, that's something we did miss reading. Sometimes you have to read these things 3 or 4 times, and the 4th time you read it, something pops out at you.
Right.
And since this has come up, it's evidently an area that needs to be amended and clarified. So I think it's a pretty easy fix.
So we'd like to see that. Now let's go back to boards and commissions. I guess the one thing that I would like to hear, Mr. Maestros, Mr. Sorese, I'd like to hear from the mayor or from somebody. I'd like to know what boards and commissions she would like a vote on, or
Yeah, I'd really like to know, if the recommendation would be to have some appointments, just appointments, or to have a vote, or what makes sense.
I think, didn't the mayor say originally that she would be happy with just having a vote?
In one of our discussions, she did, yes.
Yeah, but, you know,
And
the
if
memo.
that was the, I'm sorry, Mr. Remy, if that was the direction you were going, we do have 405 powers of the mayor on that. Earlier, we discussed taking out the legislative section, Section B. We could leave that back in, or leave that in, and whereas the first line, it's of Section B of 405, states, "The mayor shall be entitled to a seat on council, but shall have no vote therein." We could add the words, "except in the case of appointments to boards and commissions," as provided in Section 701. So the only vote that the mayor would have then, from the legislative standpoint, would give him or her a vote, a vote on the boards and commissions versus, as Mr. Romito suggested, specifically, he or she gets 2 appointments. Because I'm not sure, some boards have 5, some have 7, some have
Right,
9, I mean, so.
If you revise the language that way, would that be either both pass or neither pass, though? I mean, this public safety director thing seems pretty benign.
Cut and
you know,
dry.
I don't know that anybody's gonna, but if the other one, would that be the way it would be, though? They would
We could do it as
either pass-
separate resolution, a separate,
I would say for just to be extra precautious,
that's a good
have
point.
separate resolutions, and then you would also include the except for planning commission in it.
Well, if she's just having a vote,
Oh, versus, okay.
one vote
I understand
versus
what
an
you're saying.
appointment,
Okay,
then I think it would just be a vote. I think we would put that under a separate
Okay.
ballot issue altogether.
And I think too, that would give the mayor, if there's certain boards or commissions that she feels more strongly about, she could attend those interviews and vote. She doesn't necessarily have to vote on board or commission appointments, but it gives her the opportunity to actually feel she's making a contribution on the boards or commissions she wants to.
Yeah, and again, this is, my bringing this up, isn't about Mayor Prokop, it's, whoever's mayor. Because right now, things are going kind of smooth. At least when you watch a council meeting, they're 20 minutes long. I remember when they used to run into Jay Leno. So, it's a little different. But whoever is mayor, that they would have some input. Because in all these that we got, from this memo, council has to approve, and, mayor appoints, council approves, so there's a check and a balance there. I just think it would be nice to have everyone involved.
great, I agree. Anyone else? Any further discussion on that? I would like to see something on that. Jenny, I'm sorry, now we will go to what you had brought and presented, if you would like to.
Well, I talked to Amy. At last meeting, I said I'd call Amy about the summer recess because Mayor Prokop had said that she had wanted to address us if we were going to look at that.
Amy who, he was asked?
I'm sorry, Amy Moore, the
Our
city engineer. And when I spoke with her, she said she doesn't, her concern was that it would change this year. And I said, no, there's no way it can change this year's schedule because it has to go to a vote of the people
In November.
in November. The earliest it would affect anything as far as her timing would be 2015.
Correct.
If it passed. And she said in that case, she doesn't need to address us because as long as she has the planning time, she can adjust her schedule. If they wanted to switch it to go to the last meeting in June until the fourth Tuesday in June, and then reconvene on the second Tuesday in August, that wouldn't be a problem for her because most of her things are done by the end of June.
Now, refresh my memory, did the mayor say that there would inevitably be something that would still have to be done or is this what we're addressing?
This is what she was.
And that was it? There were no other concerns?
That was her concern, is the engineer needing something at that time period. But we've gone through this many times. When we did the roundabout legislation, that came up during our summer break, and we had 2 special meetings that year during our 4 weeks off, we had 2 meetings. When there's legislation, we get everybody together and we get it done. But that was the concern of the engineer needing to get something in. She was worried about getting something in the middle of July.
So how does council feel on the changing of the recess right now? Is it needed? Is it okay the way it is?
I don't think it matters. As I mentioned to you, we can change them anyway if we really need to. I brought it up because it came to me from some staff members who have to be at the meetings. But you know what we're talking about?
Right now, it's recess is from the first Tuesday in July until the fourth Tuesday in August. And what Gary had brought to us was changing it to the recess starts on the fourth Tuesday in June, and then you would reconvene the second Tuesday of August.
And the reason that it came up was because they're always stuck here for the 4th of July and can't go anywhere. And that's how it came up. And for some people, you know, it's right at the end of baseball season and they're ready to get out of town. But if you're working, then you have to stay.
Yeah, I don't think it matters to me. I book all the council meetings all the way through just like a bonus, June and July or August. I mean, so for me, I try to plan vacations on those off weeks of, you know, council. I try to, but I'd be kind of indifferent as to if we moved it up, that's fine. I mean, you may want to bring that up and say that it's an issue and see what kind of feedback we get from the other members of council right now, because I really don't. I mean, yeah, we've met
Please.
while we're off, and yeah.
We'll talk about it tomorrow night.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have to have it in the charter?
Jenny, Parks and Rec?
Well, that was Kim's section, which she
Maybe we should table
sent
this
us
till
the
here.
information
Parks
on.
and Rec?
Yeah, because she did it.
Right, so-
Kimberly did it all, so maybe we should table until she's here, because she's talked to
I'm fine.
Eric Schroeder and all that. Is that okay?
I second that.
Is there any other new business that anybody would like to bring up at this point in time?
Just Yukon and Kentucky.
Just real quick, on the issue that I'm going to prepare some language for you regarding the commencement and the termination of the council, is there any direction, I mean, that you guys want to go? I mean, a specific date, or are you just saying draft something? You know, as far as when the...
I mean, what are our options? I guess one option is picking a specific day, so it always happens on that day, even if it happens to be a Sunday or whatever, and
versus the
I'm
first
not
meeting.
for bringing people in on Sunday, so if we want to make it the first business day of Saturday, the first,
Of December, you mean? Or-
yeah,
I mean,
the first
it could be...
business day of
yeah,
Saturday.
right.
The first business day of December, you know what I meant.
Right. I mean, it could be, right, or the first meeting shall commence on the first meeting of council, or how, in December. I mean, I'm just trying to, nobody really has a feel for it, you just
Well, the
put
first
something
meeting of
together.
council still makes this 4 years down the
Well,
road.
you would have, the termination would be the first meeting of council, December, 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why hasn't
Make it the
council
first
addressed
meeting,
this?
correct?
Sure.
It's in the charter. I mean, it's one of those things, it comes up, and then by the time we resolve it, which is basically, you know, we swear them in, and nobody's raised it much as an issue, but the Board of Elections says you don't really have a termination date on here, so it would make them happy, apparently, but,
Well, if you go the first meeting in December, it makes it 4 years, right?
Right.
yeah.
Gary? I'm sorry, the first
You could,
meeting in December is usually the first Tuesday in
Yes.
December.
Correct.
Because of the holiday, you always move it up the
Yes.
first Tuesday and the third Tuesday.
No, first and second.
Oh, you do them one after the other?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
and I think what I would do is make it, the language, but read the first Tuesday in December, just to clarify that. And then, you know, we could have a termination upon the swearing in of the next council, which would then be the first Tuesday of that term.
Sounds good.
But, okay,
Great.
thank you.
Any other new business to come up? Next on the agenda is audience comments, if anybody has any additional comments. And next item would be miscellaneous. I have no miscellaneous. Miscellaneous almost sounds like new business, but is there anything else to come there? We've already set the next meeting, which will be 2 weeks from today, which puts us on, what?
21st.
21st?
21st.
And
21st?
anything else?
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Maestros.
You have passed out, since this spares passed out 14301, Parks and Rec Commission.
Yeah, that was subsequent to go along with the information that Kim had emailed to us, which we're
We're going to table that until
hold
she's
till the
here.
next meeting.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if you wanted me to
No, that wasn't any.
do anything with that.
That was just because we are proposing that, and she had sent everybody information on some proposed language ideas she
Right.
had. Basically, what it is in that section, we already have information that clarifies the appointments to the Park and Rec Board, because part of what she was proposing was to incorporate that into the language of the resolution, and I don't think the makeup of the Park and Rec Board, since we're already addressing it, needs to be considered, so.
Okay, but that's by code now, not by charter. Do we
Right.
want to make that into the charter, I guess is the question. Do you want to
Right,
incorporate?
that's,
Okay, so that's what you're going to discuss.
That's what we'll discuss.
Thank you.
and plus, the way I think she made it in the proposal, she's calling out 7 members. It's actually 9 members, if I read that right on the website, that
A
it's,
senior member and a teen member.
Yeah.
there's, 7 members, and then the 2 extra members, making it a total of 9, instead of a total of 7.
No, isn't there 5 ward?
Where's my?
2 teens, isn't there?
One teen and one senior. Yeah, we changed one to a senior. So I think it's only 7, isn't it? I think it's only 7, isn't it? Yeah, it's 5 wards and a teen and a senior. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it says, such commission shall be comprised of
Table this.
an appointed non-voting council member, 7 inhabitants of the city who are domiciled therein during their tenure on such commission, of which number each ward shall be represented by at least 1 adult member, and 2 adult members shall be commissioner at large. So it's saying each ward shall have 1 adult members, and then there should be 2 adult members who are commissioner at large. The 9 resident commission members
Yeah.
shall be appointed by council. 2 of such members shall be and remain during their term resident high school teenagers. So is that the makeup of the board, that we have 5 ward people, 2 at-large people, and 2 teen members?
I don't think there's at large.
So this is incorrect already?
Yes.
Ah,
Well, I think that's
Well,
what
we'll-
she's proposing, isn't it?
no, this is how it appears on the city website, what I just read. According to Chapter 143 of the City Administrative Code.
That might not have been when we changed it.
Yeah, it might not have been.
So let's,
I was on Parks and Rec before I was on council, and we only had the 5. Yes.
well, let's clarify that at the next meeting.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep.
Sounds like there's confusion already, which
So-
we will clear up.
So the at-large people is the 1 teen and the 1 senior. And by senior, do you mean senior like
citizen.
a
Senior
older
citizen.
a senior citizen?
Yeah, that is not the current language of 143.
Okay, so then the website needs to be updated.
Right, right. Walter Drain website currently has our accurate code up there, and I'm looking at that now, and it defines senior as a senior resident who's 55 years of age or older at the time of the appointment, and one member shall be and remain during his or her term a resident high school teenager. Total of 7 members.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we close the meeting, and we will pick this up at the next meeting.
Second.
Since it seems there's a lot of things out there. Seconded by Drew. You opened up a can of worms. I'll call the roll. Twyla Jones.
Oh, yes.
Dave Albright.
Yes.
Doug Detweiler.
Yes.
Russ Sipin, yes. Dean Martin.
Yes.
Drew Romito. Jenny Spira.
Yes.
And Jay Magnus.
Yes.
All right, we are closed. Yes, I do.